Barron or Dr. Ruddle, you want to jump in terms of how your stakeholders were defined or decisions were made about defining stakeholders in your project?
I'll jump in. So our project's stakeholders are primarily the scientific community. I think that's how we originally designed our study. So, you know, we've engaged with a lot of people. Of course, we were one of the first projects funded by the EngageINFEWS program, so the community has grown a lot, and we're still looking to engage in this. But we've engaged in a lot of conversations about what data is needed, and we've taken that seriously in terms of trying to craft our products and also the visualization systems. But those stakeholders are mostly you or scientists. What we discovered along the way, though, was that we were sort of surprised that the emergency management community was so interested in what we were doing. Like, that was a stakeholder that I didn't understand or see coming, that we discovered when we launched our visualization engine.
I can maybe offer a complementary perspective.
Okay, great.
And so we've used a couple different approaches to this question. One is, and I understand there are, you know, there's a sort of continuum between, you know, formal and informal processes, and the context matters, both institutional and geographic and others. But one approach we've taken is to do, you know, essentially stakeholder identification and analysis as a formal research component. And so either through, you know, inductive approaches or deductive approaches to create that network analysis, and then create a variety of categorizations using, you know, interest influence diagrams or power influence diagrams to understand, you know, at the outset of the implementation phase of the project, and understanding that there may have been stakeholders involved in scoping and proposal development and project initiation. And then when we get into implementation, doing a more formal network and power influence analysis, and then trying to essentially to collate that against the more specific research interest to narrow the focus. And so, for instance, in our current work in South America, that one of my graduate students will be speaking about in a couple of weeks, we're in the process of doing both the social network analysis and power-based analysis, interest and influence, to identify the stakeholders, but we are also doing a media framing analysis to identify from that source of data what the topics of interest are that are being discussed by specific stakeholders, at least as illustrated through that one channel or medium. And then we're identifying the stakeholders to engage with, partially based on those stakeholders that are most active in the issues that are most frequently discussed as part of both media, and we're also doing a policy analysis to identify issues. So it's a sort of collating of interest against stakeholders, against the, to identify where we should target our activities.
Thank you. So another question I would ask, and this is really for everyone as well, is thinking about that. How do we make our research activities, you know, valuable for stakeholders in terms of their participation, right? How do we ensure that they see the value of their participation? And I guess I wonder, in each project, you know, does translating that value look like a formal compensation of some kind, or what does it look like for your project specifically to try to show the value for your stakeholders that you're engaging? And to what extent does monetary compensation become the way that you do that?
I can offer an initial perspective. With our EngageINFEWS in Magic Valley, Idaho, we budgeted for honoraria and covering costs of all of our stakeholders, and we we actually struggle to spend that money. A lot of our stakeholders, will ask them and encourage them, and many of them will not take the monetary compensation, even though we've explicitly, allowed for it in the budget and in the project, which I find interesting.
Well, if I could just jump in and respond to that. So we don't have a formal compensation arrangement per se that I'm aware of, but we certainly are conscious of the need to provide value. So we would be looking for ways to do that indirectly. One way would be networking, just an opportunity for stakeholders who might not cross paths with each other in other areas might meet at our meetings, and then from that could develop some sort of mutually beneficial relationship. And of course, we are doing some research that could, as one of our stakeholders said, he wanted a commercial opportunity. So our research could conceivably provide insight into directions the market may take. So we are aware of the desirability of return on the stakeholders' time and investment. And, as we see these sort of intangible or non-monetary opportunities, we can highlight those and if necessary, maybe provide a nudge to get that ball rolling.
Yeah, and I just thought I'd pitch in to say, no, we don't offer any financial incentive. We did from the beginning always say that the meetings were going to be online, which was pretty much essential. We have people in 5 states. And our biggest challenge is working around both the agricultural schedule and the legislative schedule to find times to meet. So we have more trouble that way.
So I wanted to ask a related question. These were all very interesting approaches. Thank you. But my question is, how do you go about engaging what I call disenfranchised stakeholders, groups that you think are really important, but for whatever reason, they are not a part of the process?
Well, I do have a thought on that, and that we were looking for a science advisory committee that would have representatives from all those different constituents, but like in the farming community, there's people who are just dead set against any kind of change. So, we may not get them, but we may get a neighbor. And maybe someday in the future, maybe we plant a seed, and maybe planting seeds is fine. And these ideas grow. So that's my, I don't know if that's useful, but that was my thought.
I can offer up a reflection, not based on Fuse work, but well, sort of. I mean, it's certainly Fuse related, and we had I ran a scenario process up in the Kenai, or on the the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska, working with fishing communities, all revolving around salmon, and there's some marked aggressions amongst the fishing community there, and we simply couldn't hold workshops or any kind of engagement that acknowledged one group when we were talking to another group. And so, I mean, it was just, long seated, like just, aggressive behavior towards each other, right? In the political scene, or in the public and everything. And so it was a real challenge to kind of reach out to them, and what worked, although we never were fully able to capitalize on it, was proposing honestly 2 separate workshop kind of events where you have allies, where you invite known allies to engage those folks that have otherwise been disenfranchised from the decision-making process and feel very alienated. You kind of invite their allies and you say, okay, this is a way that we want to honor this conversation, the piece that isn't represented well. Like, let's get that going. And we did get initial buy-in. Unfortunately, we never were able to fully execute it. But it was promising to hear that, they were willing to engage. We had some good conversations with them simply by saying, okay, we acknowledge this division exists. Let's go ahead and just embrace it for now and have these two separate kind of parallel efforts so that we can still synthesize something learned from the broader society.
Well, and if I can just add to that, because I worked with Jamie on that as well. My observation is that, and I've worked with Andy and the EngageINFEWS one that he described. My observation is that when people really feel that you are listening to their opinions and incorporating their opinions into the work that you're doing, that is value added. And I think with the Alaska ACE one that Jamie was describing, what happened was we had a workshop and people went back to people they knew and said, this is a valuable workshop. They're listening to us and you should really get involved in it. And that happened with our EngageINFEWS project as well. So I think that's always important, is that people actually feel like you're incorporating their ideas into the research that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Paula. I do have one more question for our group. I welcome others as well, but I wanted to ask what it looks like for you to close the loop on stakeholder engagement, or to sort of conclude, right? What does stakeholder engagement ending look like in a stakeholder engagement project in these different contexts?
This is Ben. I hear silence, so I will jump in. So the question is, what does stakeholder engagement look like?
What does it look like for stakeholder engagement to close, or to kind of, what does it mean to close that loop or circle back or finish a stakeholder engagement project? Yeah, so I have two answers, both short. So on the academic side, I think we as professionals, we kind of do this in our own time and for our own reasons. You don't have to push it too much, and the loop has been closed when, like, if you're doing data product generation or building educational content, when you see your colleagues using the data and the educational content, I would consider that a closed loop to some extent. Direct collaboration is an even better closing of the loop when you're able to do collaborative work or build follow-up proposals together that builds on the foundation. On the public stakeholder side, it's much harder, and I think you need to have a process in place that actually has resources reserved to do it actively, where you design a process so that you can get through the meat of it early enough in your funding cycle and in your project, so that you actually have funded time and energy to close the loop and follow up. It can't be an afterthought. It has to be a part of a process, and that requires money. It requires a plan, and it requires being early enough so that you actually get it done before everybody graduates and you run out of money.
And hi, everybody. My name is Keith Klein, and I know Chelsea from way back, and maybe met some of you. I hope you're all doing well. I spent some time working in South America and Central America, and I guess I feel like I agree with what was just said. You got to plan for it and build in a budget for it, for all this, but it really starts at the beginning, because the research kind of, in my mind, is always kind of in the background of a process where you're trying to work with local champions, with local leaders through, their and opposing different. When we dealt with oppositional groups, we often had to work with the church or village elders, or you had to find a way to get kind of respect in the community to convene people in the community. And then you brought in the local governor, the local authorities who people wanted to talk to. And you basically tried to create a dialogue where the message about, in our case, conservation and better natural resource management could be part of it and could be offered as one of the tools to help people meet their needs. And then the closing the loop is you try to get these relationships set up where they continue through those local governance processes. So the short answer, Chelsea, is it doesn't end. You try to set something up that will keep going.
But you have to have a mechanism to turn it over. And
Right.
that's where the process that was mentioned before is really useful, to have that plan in place from the beginning.
I'll go back.
Great, thank you. Mhm. Yeah, so for me, I feel like that's a really great and important insight, right? To recognize that planning for the transition out of the funded project period and planning for, empowering your group of stakeholders or participants to take the information and have some ownership or some sense of, intention with it is a part of what it means to engage stakeholders. And I appreciate you being willing to think through with me, what does it mean to close that loop with our engagement and not just not see stakeholder engagement as just part of the research, but as a part of the full research process. I appreciate that, thank you. Any other questions or comments from our panelists, our presenters, or our audience?
I had a question, more so one of the issues, I guess, or the problems that I've seen arise in my work is the social desirability bias, which I know is a term that's like maybe not commonly used in a lot of fields, but that idea that they're telling you what you want to hear, even if you're trying to mitigate it. And I don't know if anybody else has seen this or found successful ways to try and mitigate it within communities, or when you're doing this engagement with different individuals or groups.
I'll throw out one idea. It depends on your goal with the stakeholder engagement, I think. If it is sort of the visioning kind of process, I think social desirability sort of plays well with that. But I've used it exclusively in the scenario kind of alternative futures context. And our whole goal is to really challenge the assumptions about the future. And that gets you well outside of that social desire really fast, right? You just, through the exercises, it breaks down those prejudices or those inherent assumptions about how things should go. And once those are broken down, you open up the playing field for really creative, thoughtful, ideas of how to adapt and how to move forward. And yeah, so I would imagine it really does depend on sort of the goal and the role of the stakeholders and how to break those down, because sometimes it's as simple as just phrasing the question such that there's no easy answer, right? They can't just say, oh yeah, this seems like the right approach, and oh, this is going to make everybody happy. Yeah, I think I've definitely had success just challenging every assumption about how things will work out, and breaking that barrier down.
Yeah, but Adeline, you've got a really unique situation with your, people reporting that they're not using lead in the pumps that they're building for people. And I don't know, that would be a really, really difficult, obviously they're doing it because it's expedient and less expensive to build pumps using lead, I would assume. I don't know, have you tried educating people about you know, the effects of lead in those pumps, I don't know how you would address that. It's a really difficult question.
Yeah, so within our work, it's this is more in like the evaluation. So we've developed this campaign and done these trainings and stuff. And so we had like a questionnaire at the beginning with like, your knowledge on lead or your thoughts about it, your behavior with using it, different things like that. And then we gave them the same questionnaire, like after training to see like what they gained. But at both points, they're like, of course lead's bad. Of course I never use it. And then it's like, if we're sitting there watching them make this like adapt a pump, they're of course going to do it the way that they saw at our training, even if that's not. And so we're like, how do you be ethical and understand like, oh, what message isn't getting across, or how to get this change when you can't be there watching them or like creeping for yeah, so it's definitely, that's been an interesting challenge that I hadn't really considered before. And we tried doing like more retrospective questions, but again, with the population and the culture and stuff, those were very confusing to them to try and word the questions that way.
I'm
I just
dropping
wanted to
off.
jump in. Yeah, go ahead.
I have to drop for another meeting. Apologies. So I didn't talk about our stakeholder engagement process. So the Fusion project has a supplement from NSF to build a scalable stakeholder engagement process. It's called Fusion for Community Resilience. And it has a website, and we have a curriculum, a whole textbook, which is designed to be used basically as the content in a graduate university course, but it can also be used directly in the stakeholder community. So if anybody's into this, you are invited to check out Fusion for Community Resilience. I put the link in the chat window. This is actually designed for you to use as a stakeholder engagement process in your community. So check it out and let me know if you want to talk about it.
Ben, I'll just point you, we'll be sending out information in the next few weeks on working groups, and one of those is focused on sort of education, including graduate education and stakeholder education. So that might be another way to kind of make some connections here. Thank you. Well, we're sort of
I
on
want to
time.
recognize that we're right at time.
Yep.
Go ahead, Andy.
Thanks, Tiff. I was going to say, yeah, exactly the same thing. We're on time here, so we'll conclude. I just wanted to thank Ben, Tom, Bob, and Adeline for their presentations and recordings. Thank you, Chelsea, for your facilitation today, and Sarah Dingler for the logistics for making this happen. And welcome everyone to join our second Lightning Talk session, which is this Friday, February 26th, 11 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Mountain, 1 p.m. Central, and 2 o'clock Eastern Time. And then our third Lightning Talk sessions are next Wednesday, March 3 at 9 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Mountain, 11 in the morning Central, and 12 noon Eastern. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.